Movement restrictions to contain the COVID-19 pandemic have disrupted economic activity on a global scale. Now, for more on this reality, we have James Kim, Chairman of the American Chamber of Commerce in Korea, in the studio with us. Welcome, Mr. Kim.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we also have our Kelly Kasulis still with us. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, Mr. Kim, how would you assess Korea's response to the COVID-19 pandemic?
You know, obviously there's a lot of praise about the progress Korea has made. We also published something called the Daily Tracker that walks us through all the progress Korea is making today on a daily basis. But as a business person, I always want to take a look at results and the performance. And when you look at the results in Korea, after being the second largest epicenter in the world today, we have, 10,000 cases, 64% recovered, a death rate of around 1.7, 1.8%. Those are really, really phenomenal numbers. Obviously, you don't want to lose anybody, but the fact that the rate is only 1.7, 1.8% speaks a volume about what Korea has done. We had a peak of 909 cases on the 29th, and today, in many weeks, we're now below 50. So we should all be very proud of what the Korean government has done, what the Korean citizens have done, and what the Korean companies and multinational companies have done to promote this progress.
Right. Mr. Kim, what has business been like for AMCHAM members amid this climate of crisis?
You know, I think you'll be a little surprised at my answer today. I'm in constant contact with all the member companies, especially the Board of Governors. And we have 30 Board of Governors, ranging from companies like FedEx to United, to the Hyatt hotel business, Qualcomm, and so on and so forth. So we have the real big companies represented today. Obviously, all of us are following the guidelines from the Korean government. We want to be good corporate soldiers. We have postponed events. We're avoiding public gatherings. And we're giving every one of our employees the option to work at home. We also conducted a survey on COVID-19. And obviously, COVID-19 has definitely impacted businesses for everybody here in South Korea. But I think that although they are having some shortfalls in revenue today, I like to put them in three buckets. They're the companies like in the travel and tourism business. It's really, really tough for them. And I really feel bad. But at the same time, you have the ones in the middle and the other spectrum where business is not that bad. So I think that there could be the doom and gloom concept, but there's also a lot of optimism where we can all feel pretty comfortable that when COVID-19 goes away, we're going to be in a much better position to succeed, both in Korea and globally.
And we'll get back to that later on. But first, let's take our attention to the U.S., Mr. Kim, where authorities have recorded more than 335 cases so far. What's the current state of the economy there like?
Well, obviously, U.S. is in a pretty dire situation today. Every morning, when I, on my way to the office or at the office itself, I follow President Trump's daily press briefing. And you take away some of the politics, I think President Trump is doing a phenomenal job. Every morning, he's speaking to the U.S. audience about things that are going on. So I think he's really taking a strong line about leading from the front, walking us through all the good, the bad, and the possibilities, and showing some optimism. But I think that U.S. is a country with a lot of innovation, a lot of strong people out there. So I do feel that they will recover.
Right. And before we continue, let's take a look at this next video where we see some changes in the business arena amid the COVID-19 pandemic here in Korea.
The American Chamber of Commerce in Korea office located in Seoul. An important meeting is about to take place with around 200 representatives from member companies.
Looking at various aspects of the impact of COVID-19 on U.S. businesses in Korea and on the U.S.-Korea partnership.
Today's conference will be in the form of virtual webinar.
Many of these issues that you folks are going to continue to offer a series of these webinars focused on the various impacts of COVID-19 and how companies can adapt and thrive in this new environment.
We're going to take about
AMCHAM is now using webinars to engage with its members since the COVID-19 outbreak began, replacing face-to-face meetings.
Most businesses, we've been practicing social distancing. As the American Chamber of Commerce, we tend to be a very face-to-face business. So we've been looking at other tools that we can use to continue to bring that kind of value to our members. That includes webinars like the ones that we hosted today. We've also been hosting smaller meetings online with our members. We've done a lot more communication by telephone, virtually, and in writing.
The office environment has changed since AMCHAM adopted a work-from-home policy.
Most of our employees have been working from home. We usually have just a few people at the office every day, only if there's some urgent business that really requires us to be here. In a way, it can even incentivize you to be more productive to show results.
The COVID-19 has resulted in a different work culture involving the use of virtual conferences, phones, writing and other forms of non-face-to-face interactions. A recent survey in South Korea showed that 74.5% of all laborers were satisfied with working from home. Social distancing measures are also being practiced. Flex-time working hours have been adopted, allowing people to avoid rush hours. Many cafeterias now require workers to sit facing one direction and have even set up partitions. Seating has been rearranged to alleviate congestion in crowded office spaces, and 3-feet-high partitions have been set up. Office environments are undergoing radical changes as companies try to prevent the spread of COVID-19.
So as seen in the video, Mr. Kim, it appears that virtual conferences have become the norm. How are people responding to these changes in the work environment?
You know, we launched the webinars because our member companies have asked for accurate, timely information that they could rely on. So we felt that because we canceled a lot of our physical events, we wanted to use the right technology to do a webinar. And we feel that a webinar is a great way to provide updated and informed decisions for our members. And I think it has been very, very positive. And as you know, a lot of our member companies are technology companies. So when we use their technology to do a webinar, it's been really, really a successful experience. Our first webinar we did last week with very little promotional campaigns had 175 participants. So we feel that a webinar is a new way to provide more information. But when you take a look at AMCHAM member companies, whether they're schools, Seoul Foreign School, or the Dwight School, they're already using the technology to do virtual learning. And when you take a look at a lot of our other member companies, such as AWS or Microsoft or Google or IBM, cloud computing makes it so much easier to facilitate these kind of virtual conferences, virtual meetings. And when you look at a company like 3M, another one of my member companies, they actually make masks and all kinds of other things that could be very positive on COVID-19. So we really rely a lot on the webinars to educate what U.S. member companies are doing and how we can help the Korea ecosystem combat COVID-19 during these, pretty, negative, environment today.
Kelly, I suppose similar adjustments have been made in the work environment in the U.S. as well. Not only the work environment, probably the education environment as well.
Absolutely. I mean, schools have been closed down. I've heard from family members in the U.S. that say they're going crazy because their kids have been home, all day for weeks now. I've heard from friends and colleagues, they're all working from home. I have several friends and fellow journalists that I know in New York City who have escaped to other states and, want to go back to that city where basically the U.S. is having its biggest outbreak, and they can't. And we're seeing even in some towns, some states, that all non-essential businesses are being closed down. My parents' business in Connecticut is closed. It seems like right now a lot of people are out of work, not working at all, and if they are working, they're working differently than they were a few weeks ago, for sure.
Movement restrictions have been put into place, Mr. Kim, to combat the coronavirus, and this also includes travel bans between countries. What do you suppose is the impact of such restrictions on business between countries?
First and foremost, the U.S. did not issue a travel ban for South Korea. There's 4 levels that the U.S. State Department, really, publishes. We're currently at a level 3 for most parts of South Korea, except for Daegu. So if you really wanted to travel, you could. But obviously, anytime there's a curtailment of travel, it's really not that good, especially from a business perspective. That's the reason why I am very thankful for companies like FedEx, Korean Airlines. What have they done? They have transformed the passenger mode of transportation to packaging or packages and other types of important goods, including medical devices and medical gear. So I think this is another way companies are transforming themselves to make sure that, although people-to-people transport could be difficult or limited, packaging is still going along pretty well today. Mm-hmm. And I'm very, very pleased that these companies have done such a great job.
Kelly, what's the public response like in the U.S. regarding the entry restrictions or bans of travelers to the country?
I have looked for public polls on this and haven't found any, but I will say anecdotally speaking, observing what Americans are saying on social media as well as speaking to Americans, there's not that much sentiment against travel restrictions and travel bans. To be quite frank, I think much of the United States is in panic mode right now, and they want to do whatever they can to stay safe, to the point where I think this can even fuel a sense of xenophobia. So I think, on average, people probably don't mind a ban or don't have strong feelings about it.
During the G20 virtual summit, President Moon Jae-in called for exemptions to the travel ban for business people. What are your thoughts on this?
First and foremost, it's great that the G20 ministers got together and seem to have an aligned, view on how to handle this crisis today. But for us, taking measures to practice fair, free trade is really important for the long run. And the faster we can get all the economies working together in an aligned method is going to really help us over the long term. So I'm very happy that they're working together. I wish they can share even more information more quickly, with more transparency and more accuracy. Then we can help fight the virus in those countries that we know are coming. I see my map from the Johns Hopkins report every day, and you just know what countries are right behind Korea. I think Korea is now number 16 or 17 today. And I just see the rest of the countries in the world that are going to overtake Korea in the numbers. And that's where I think we need to do some real help.
Mr. Kim, just out of curiosity, where do you believe does the priority lie when talking about public health and economic stability? I mean, authorities are seeking a balance between the two. Where does priority lie, in your opinion?
Well, as a business person, obviously saving lives is the most important aspect, regardless of any economics. So I think having the right balance is very, very important. I mentioned earlier today, I'm in constant contact with 30 board of governors, and I place these companies in 3 buckets. Some are having really a catastrophic problem today. When your revenues are off 95%, there's not much you can do, right? But the ones in the middle, their revenue may be off 20%, 30%, but that's something you could transform. But there are other companies out there that are doing pretty well, right? These companies are taking a look at COVID and what they can do to transform their business model. A lot of companies that we know are going from offline to online. So e-commerce has done really, really well. So my whole, thesis behind this is we have a healthcare problem today, which is severe, but we also need the economy to get back strong so that we could provide value back to the healthcare professionals that can help save lives. And we need to do that in conjunction as we manage through this crisis.
Meanwhile, Kelly, the jobless claims in America hit an all-time high. It's not looking very bright there.
Yeah, it's actually the highest declaration of unemployment to the U.S. government in history, which is a pretty phenomenal crazy thing to think about. The last numbers I saw, it's 9.95 million people have filed for unemployment, so close to 10 million people. It's so common that I myself know many people in that position. It wouldn't surprise me if many people that I'm connected with on social media are also out of work. And I think it does not bode well for the US economy. I mean, even within the journalism industry, I've seen major drawbacks on budgets because of a fear of a recession. And I don't mean to sound the alarm bell too much, but I do not know, and I don't think any of us can really know what the long-lasting impact on the economy will be, especially since we can't tell when this virus can be contained on a global scale.
That's true. Only time can tell, right? Mr. Kim, the ministers, trade ministers of the G20 also held talks, and they signed a joint declaration attempting to ease perhaps the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I mentioned that before, but when these ministers do get together and have an aligned view, I think that can help accelerate the progress that we're making today. And I think that Korea is really leading the way in how to accelerate some of the improvements in containing COVID. And I really like what Prime Minister Chung did over the weekend, where he talked about extending social distancing for a few more weeks. I think we can all be very, very happy with the progress in Korea. And I was just out over the weekend, and I'm seeing a lot of people not practicing social distancing today. I was at a food court, same thing. I'm looking at parks, a lot of people out there. So I think that Prime Minister Chung did a great job to reinforce that this virus isn't over. And although we should be celebrating that we are below 50, I think we need to be more vigilant than ever before.
Right, we need to be more cautious,
Yes.
of course. All right, James Kim, Chairman of AMCHAM, thank you for being with us today. And Kelly, again, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
And on that note, we end today's edition of COVID-19. Do join us again tomorrow at the same hour. In the meantime, Arirang TV welcomes your thoughts and inquiries through our social media accounts or our homepage, arirang.com. Thank you for being with us.